My next guest is on an amazing journey. He's an international speaker, consultant, worked with Sony, Apple, all the major institutions. He's also been a speaker in demand at Harvard 4 years in a row. With all of that, he's on an interesting journey to create heaven on earth. Do stay tuned for this discussion. Martin, it's good to see you.
Thank you, Phyllis.
It's a pleasure. You have a remarkable background. I would like to discuss that a bit, but right away, can you tell me what is Project Heaven on Earth?
Well, can I go into the background part first? Because I
Sure.
think that context is important. I'm a management consultant. I've worked with large companies on their vision. So Marion Merrill Dow, Apple Computer, Sony Pictures, Southern California Edison. I've spoken 4 times at the Harvard Business School. All of that to say that my focus as a consultant has been on producing results. And when I looked in the world about 20 years ago, I saw that there were results, Phyllis, that I didn't really like. Hunger, war, poverty. And I thought, can I do something about this? And then this idea popped into my head, heaven on earth. And my first thought, literally, when that popped into my mind was, you can't say that. You can't say heaven on earth. You know, I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. But then I thought, well, wait a minute. I can talk about hell on earth, can I? Why can't we talk about heaven on earth? And that's when the notion was born. And these last years have been about refining that and getting that message so crystal clear that people can get it instantly.
Well, you are well known to people for co-authoring Chicken Soup for the Soul at Work. You've got this book published in 20 languages. What kind of reaction did you get when you started talking about heaven on earth? I mean, you're kind of a straight business type.
I am. I got a bunch of reactions, all the way from, oh, finally, somebody's talking about this. I get it. All the way to blank, new subject, and everything in between. And so my work over these years has been about how do we get it across in a way that you're not threatened by it, you don't think it's impossible. All of the misbeliefs and misperceptions we have about the kind of world we want. How do we set that aside and really look for what is heaven on earth for you, and how can you begin bringing it about? So the essence here, Phyllis, is not that I'm going to impose what heaven on earth, my definition of heaven on earth on you. That's proselytizing. Rather, what I'm about is evoking what heaven on earth already exists in you and giving you permission to take that out in the world in a way that's simple and easy and elegant for you.
But this brings us to one of the more difficult questions, and I noticed maybe people have not asked you this question.
Sure.
Isn't our very problem on earth the fact that we have conflicting notions of heaven on earth?
Good. It's a very good question. If what you're saying, so actually, let me go deeper into what you're saying from what I've heard from people. We can't talk, or I can't talk about heaven on earth because my definition of heaven on earth might conflict with yours. And so the fear is that conflict would arise. And in fact, what happens is not that. What happens, and I'm going to go into this in a couple of seconds with you, I asked 3 particular specific questions that get people in touch with heaven on earth, what it is for them. And in a room, when they stand up in a workshop and start sharing that, it's so profoundly moving. So for me, heaven on earth could be ending hunger, and for you, it could be about bringing more love into the world. I'm making those answers up. But rather than going boom, 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 it's about more love. No, it's about ending hunger. No, it's about, no, that's not going to go anywhere. My job would be to support you in what heaven on earth is for you, and your job is to support me in what heaven on earth is for me. Now, that doesn't say, Phyllis, that there are some crazies in the world who want to get rid of Jews or get rid of blacks or get rid of Muslims, or yes, there are, but they're the vast minority of the world. I want the vast majority of the world to be in control again.
Well, let's take your wonderful book that you've created as part of Project Heaven on Earth. It's an amazing journey, this piece of work.
Thank you.
Talk about it. Why did you create it this way?
How about a little plug? There it is.
Project Heaven on Earth. Perfect.
I created it the way I did because it is a journey. It is a workbook. It is a strategic book. It's a book to engage you in discovering what heaven on earth is for you and get you into action on that. So when I looked at the structure, rather than just talk about heaven on earth and open that possibility for you, which is nice, but it doesn't get you in action. So the book is full of questions and inquiries and statements from other people about what heaven on earth is for them, and different gateways. There are 8 major gateways that I've discovered, so that you find this is my heaven on earth project, whatever that is for you, and you start acting on that, because it's the acting on heaven on earth. It's the bringing about heaven on earth. That is, somebody said the other day to me, heaven on earth is no longer a good idea, Martin. It's now imperative. And I thought that was a good way to say it.
There are some individuals who have a good sense, at least from my experience, of their personal heaven on earth. Is being devoted to that enough, or do you need to have a consciousness about having heaven on earth for others as well?
Brilliant question. I don't think anyone's ever asked me that. I take you where you're at. If heaven on earth for you is about, I have to get my life in order, great. If heaven on earth for you is I have to end hunger in the world, end the suffering, or make an institution or a country work, great. Wherever it is for you, that's where I want to support you. That's where I want you to begin, because the more people we have beginning, the more people, really what this book is about and this work is about, Phyllis, is changing the story of what it means to be a human and what it means to be humanity. 10, 15 years ago, we heard a lot of conversation, the current story is not working. We need a new story. We need a new story. We need, right? But nobody named that new story. So we stopped hearing that kind of language. I'm suggesting that the name of the story is we're experiencing and co-creating heaven on earth. I'm inviting you in. I'm asking you to discover what that is for you and get going on that.
Well, I get the beauty of this. I get the excitement of this. I actually want to play. When I first met you, you asked me 3 questions, and I've been in those 3 questions for quite a while. But you're up against a very fixed construct. You're up against thousands of years of belief that good must be bound with evil, that you can only have darkness, you can only have light if you have darkness. All of these concepts are very rooted in our religious constructs. Maybe not one single group has it. Almost all of the religious groups have this. How do you deal with this idea that you have to have the bad in order to have the good, which seems to be a fundamental belief?
It is a fundamental. I think the fundamental belief is, underneath all of them, this is not heaven on earth, and it can never be. And so we put things on like, it's impossible for me. I'm a man, I'm a woman, I'm a Canadian, I'm American. Today is Tuesday, so I can't do it. Here's my background, you don't understand. All the reasons we can give for not engaging with this. And so there's a chapter in my book in which I look at all of them, well, not all of them, but a lot of them, and say, look, you can either be right about it can't happen, or you can get on with beginning to make it happen. And that this time in the evolution of humanity is the time when we have the power, Phyllis, to co-create the story we want for us as humanity. That's what's so powerful about this age that we've now entered. And so if that's accurate, and I say it is, then let's declare this as heaven on earth.
In your view, what are the biggest obstacles to creating heaven on earth? I mean, are they the problems that you see? What are the things in the way?
there's a chapter in my book in which I look at the misbeliefs and misperceptions. I think the fundamental one is this is not heaven on earth, and we can never have heaven on earth. No matter how good things get, this isn't it. We were kicked out of the garden. We can never go back in. I actually addressed that in the book, that yes, we can go back in. I looked at the 3 Abrahamic religions, and they don't say we can't go back in. It's really fascinating to me. So yes, you can throw up any argument that this is not heaven on earth, and it cannot be. But what you get out of that argument is to be right. And so what? You're right that it can't be. That to me is not exciting. That doesn't engage you. That doesn't have you contribute in service to yourself and your family and your country and the world. That's what I'm interested in, you being of service now. You unleashing your full creativity to have the kind of world you want.
Now, if you were the normal seeker or the average Joe who gets enlightenment, I wouldn't ask you the question I'm about to ask you.
Therefore, I'm not.
You
Perfect.
are in touch with a lot of the big influencers in our world. You have spoken to some of the most elite audiences around. What kinds of honest reaction do you get? Are you attacked? Are you threatened? I mean, this can upend a lot of people's very comfortable construct.
It does. And I say it with love and respect and as an offering. And hopefully I make my argument. Hopefully they engage. And I'll tell you the 3 questions I ask because I think it's important at this point in the interview. There are people who get it instantly, and are in. There are people for whom it's like, forget it, we're not going to do this. It's stupid, it's ridiculous, it'll never happen. And there are others who are tweaked just a little bit. But as you know, I keep speaking about this over and over and over and over in multiple venues. And partly what I want to do is just make the conversation about heaven on earth a normal conversation. And there are other people who are it's arising in the world now. There's a husband and wife couple in Hawaii who have done the Heaven on Earth video contest. I didn't even know them. A guy in Louisiana who's written 2 or 3 books now about heaven on earth. And I met him online as well. So I think that meme, that thought form is coming in to our world right now. And so I know it also, Phyllis, it's going to take time. I can't, and I don't want to impose it on you. I want it to be, to arise organically within you. If it makes sense, if it resonates, go for it.
Well, I'm actually looking for guidance from you because I know my own personal tendency. When I sort of see something that I want to convey that may be off the beaten path, it does take a little bit more courage to do that.
Yes.
So what I'm looking for from you for this answer is, what do you do? You say kindness is one of the things you do, but what do you do when you're talking to that person who you really want to have them see what you're saying, but you know that they're in this other world, this very sophisticated, fixed notion world? How do you break through and how do you fortify yourself in the speaking?
So the two questions, 2 parts of the question. One is, I let it be okay for them not to get it and not to engage. They need to know that in no way do they have to do this. And because that's my own integrity, because it's an offering, it's not a have to, it's not a should. And I have no idea once I place the seed, when it'll sprout forward. Maybe never, maybe tomorrow, maybe the next day. I don't know. But I know I just have to just keep putting it out, keep putting it out. The second question is, how do I fortify myself? I fortify myself by seeing the suffering in the world and seeing that what's more important than my feeling scared about bringing this topic up, or feeling scared that you might, dismiss me, put me down, think this is a stupid idea. I look at the suffering in the world and I think that's much more important to end than my feeling of being frightened. I don't know if you recall, but at the beginning of the book, there's a story about this young girl that I met. The book is dedicated in part to her, some other people as well, but she had been in Brazil. She'd been burned with cigarettes all over her body. She was catatonic. And I had a little toy and I reached forward to give it to her, and she withdrew, and I didn't know what to do. And I sent her a thought. I said, look, I'm really sorry that this happened to you. You know, may you have a better life. And she really, really impacted me. The suffering was so horrendous that I decided to write it up at the beginning of the book and dedicate the book in part to her, because I don't think that's suffering is necessary. I think that's the driver for me. That suffering is not necessary. And what can I do to bring about the end of it?
Well, this is a big task. So let's assume that there are millions already, which we know, who've joined your cause.
Yeah.
How do you use this magnificent book? Because this is not just your typical book. How do you get into this?
Well, hold the book up and would you read the title, please? What does the title say?
Project Heaven on Earth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But there's another way to read the title.
Okay. Project Heaven on Earth. Ah, wow. Okay. So you can become a personal projector of heaven
on earth. So it's project heaven on earth is in the state of being, and project heaven on earth is in the state of doing. So being, doing, so that we have heaven on earth. And I think, the second question I ask is, if you had a magic wand that could have heaven on earth, what's heaven on earth? And that magic wand is very powerful because it allows people to not have to know how they're going to have heaven on earth. And so if they don't have to know how, they can go purely into the what. And when you listen to what people know that they already know that they want for heaven on earth, it's so moving. The book goes through 8 different gateways that I've discovered, having asked people over and over and over and over again, here's a magic wand, what's heaven on earth for you? So there are patterns to the answers. I didn't expect that going. I didn't know what to expect going in.
Has your life changed from the point you started this to now?
No.
No?
Yes, a lot. I think, and it continues to change. The space of heaven on earth in me continues to expand and expand. And I see how it's becoming more normalized. 3 guys, myself and 2 other guys, get together every week on the phone, just, like a men's group, talk about our lives. And one of the guys got it. He's in, that's it. The other guy was, well, no. And then after about a year, he started to talk about heaven on earth as normal as we're talking about marshmallows. And he didn't notice it, but I noticed it. So part of what this does is normalize the conversation. I want it to be as normal for me to come up to you and say, Phyllis, can I ask you a question? What are you doing for heaven on earth? And you would answer, and then we would go to lunch or something.
Well, it's certainly become, part of my mission. I'm very happy to share that I am engaged in this moment with my heaven on earth. My view is that there's so much wisdom to share in the world, and there's been so much not shared. My vision is to make sure that all of this wisdom is available for people and can be gotten over the airways. I'm not the only one who feels this way, but we haven't taken advantage of the true use of media, and that is sharing wisdom that can cause transformation, can cause a shift, can help an everyday person. So I'm grateful that you're willing to do this work and come and talk to me.
Thank you, Phyllis. And I'm grateful for you. I remember a conversation we had a while back in which you talked about your commitment to the kind of media that you want to see in the world. And very clearly, you didn't say it at the time, but I was thinking that's her contribution to heaven on earth, very clearly.
So let's give some tactical steps besides buying the book, clearly, which I highly recommend.
On Amazon, just it's simple.
Well, Amazon is definitely, I wish would be heaven on earth if I had purchased the stock when I thought of it, but I didn't.
Yeah.
Um, but anyway, let's talk about some tactical things because, as you said, you dedicated this book to a young woman who was a young child who was suffering. There is an enormous amount of suffering on the planet. Are there some suggestions that you have from things you've heard that we can all do to help end suffering? Is there anything tactical that you can recommend?
A couple of things. In the chapter that I write about ending suffering, because that is clearly one of the gateways into heaven on earth, what I found, Phyllis, is that there's what I call a keystone suffering. That is a suffering that really, really hurts you in the world. It could be hunger, poverty, war, whatever that one is for you. If that's your gateway, there are other gateways, but let's say this is your gateway. The reason it's a keystone suffering is because that's the suffering that really bothers you. And the keystone, if you know, in an archway, is the last stone that's put in, and it holds all the tension. If you take that keystone away, the entire bridge collapses, the entire arch collapses. That's what people feel about their keystone suffering. And this particular suffering and all the other ones will collapse. Right? That's point one. Point two is, then when they look at it, it's like, oh my God, it's too big, it's too overwhelming. I can't, what difference can I make? All the stuff comes up. And so let me just tell you a little story because this is exactly what happened. Two stories, or actually two women. One, a woman named Brenda McKenzie, a real estate agent. We're talking about sufferings in the world. And she said, I said, Brenda, is there a suffering that bothers you? And she said, whoa, yeah, homelessness. Real estate agent, of course. So I said, what's heaven on earth for homelessness? And she said, well, obviously, Martin, a home for everyone. But that's impossible. I'm a real estate agent. I work 87 hours a day. I'm in a relationship that takes another 100 hours a day, blah, 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 blah. Fine. So I said, Brenda, stop. What are you going to do? And she was like, oh. She goes back to her real estate agency, 10 agents, sits them down and says, we're going to end homelessness by providing a home for everyone. Easily. Here's how. When you sell a home or a building, I'm asking you to agree to have $100 come off your commission. Would you be willing to do that? Everybody said yes. That was it. That's all they had to do was say yes once. They have raised $140,000 in the last 5 years. They asked community groups or individuals to put in proposals about a home for everyone. And the judging committee is made up of the 10 agents plus one of their clients. So 20 people collectively each year decide on where that money goes. So here's something that was completely overwhelming. There's nothing I can do. I hate homelessness. If you stop there, the only thing you'll do is be right. If you look at the tiniest little action you can take to begin to end that suffering, you're in. The other quick story, we're talking about violence against women. And this woman said, it's terrible in my county. I've been to the police, I've been to the government, nothing. What would you do? And I said, well, I don't know. You could donate $5,000, you could donate a penny. Well, what difference would a penny make? One of the other people, this was a webinar, and the call said, what if people in your community donated a penny a day to help end violence against women? She went, oh my God. They started a program called Making Change, in which they handed out a little mason jar with a picture of a woman, half her face beaten up, bruised, half her face bright, alive, light coming out of it. I only want a penny a day or more. They raised $2,500. This was in Canada. They then took that result to the group in the Canadian government called Status of Women, who gave them, get this, $100,000 for each of the subsequent 3 years. Now she says, anywhere I go, people say, what can I do? So you can't get stopped by the thought, it's a thought, that the ending the suffering is too big. If everybody believes it's too big, we're dead. If everyone says, oh, here's what I can do, here's what I can do, we've begun the momentum.
You are married, Mark.
I am.
Talk about your wife's journey in this conversation.
She's been amazing. You can see it moves me. You know, I took many, many years to write this book Phyllis. I would write, go away, get clear. I'm not clear on something, I have to go back. So she was with me. She kept supporting me. And it was difficult for her. A couple of weeks ago, she said, sometimes I have to tell you the truth. I can't stand it sometimes when you talk about heaven on earth. I need to leave the room. Which was great that she said that. But when I send her or show her results that are phenomenal, how can it not be moving to any human being? So she's very proud. She's especially proud that I did the book. She knows what that means to me.
Who would you like to ask 3 questions of that you've not had a chance to ask?
Well, Bill Gates. Yeah. Or Oprah. Bill Gates and Oprah together in the same room.
I definitely, I think they would appreciate, I think Oprah probably is already on your path, my guess would be.
Me too.
Do you want to have a forum in our places of government? Do you want to have a forum in our United Nations, places like that?
One of the other chapters in the book, another gateway, is institutions. And my contention is I want the institutions of society to take their rightful place in co-creating heaven on earth. What if the purpose of business was to co-create heaven on earth? The purpose of religion, the purpose of government. This is interesting. For many people, the idea of an institution taking its rightful place in co-creating heaven on earth is more impossible than having heaven on earth. And that's because of the deep misbelief we have about our institutions being agents of heaven on earth. But I had to write about that. I had to say, because I know there are people who are beginning to think that way, all right, I'm going to take on government. I'm going to take on my country. I have people who have taken on their nation as a heaven on earth nation in Croatia, Denmark, Hungary, Austria, Mexico. And when I asked them, it's interesting. I remember asking the woman in Austria, Elizabeth, heaven on earth for Austria? Like, whoa, why? And she said, well, because it's simple. And man, did I shut up after that. Because for her, that's a simple act. For another person, it could be just putting their definition of heaven on earth at the end of their email. They're both simple acts in their framework. Okay, fine. Which is one of the things I've also discovered, Phyllis, is that there's an elegance to people's contribution, a simplicity, it's organic. It's like, oh, I can do that. A woman made a tea called Heaven on Earth tea. A cafe made a Heaven on Earth coffee. A police, I think he's a corporal, wrote a 16-page manual on heaven on earth for law enforcement. So you never know what people are going to do.
You need a documentary person to follow you around while you have these conversations. I mean, have you talked to any young children, young people?
Yes, I had a woman in her public school, a teacher, excuse me, who loved the 3 questions and went to the parents and said, can I ask the 3 questions, 1 per week? They all said yes, and she asked them. And I think if you ask a child, here's a magic wand, you can have heaven on earth. Watch out. They'll tell you. They know.
Wow. Let's end our discussion with the 3 questions one more time.
Well, we haven't even asked the 3 questions, but I'll ask you again. I'll ask you. So question 1 is, recall a time when you experienced heaven on earth. What was going on? You don't have to remember this. If you go to my website, projectheavenonearth.com, they're there. There's a free 7-day course. And of course, they're in the book. Question 1 again, recall a time when you experienced heaven on earth. What's heaven on earth for you? Question 2, here's a magic wand, and with it, you can have heaven on earth. What's heaven on earth for you? And question 3, what simple, easy, concrete steps will you take in the next 24 hours to move heaven on earth forward?
Thank you, Martin. Project Heaven on Earth. Project Heaven on Earth. It's been a pleasure talking with you. I look forward to more conversations with you.
Thank you, Phyllis, so much. A pleasure, truly.